Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Tom LaHue, and I want to thank you for joining me for this video. We're going to talk about the Enneagram today and its impact and its influence in my life. And you read the title right. The Enneagram cost me my job, and I'm going to tell you about that in just a minute. But before we get started, just a reminder, in the description below is a link to my website, tomlahue.com, where you can book Enneagram coaching appointments for yourself or for your marriage, your relationship. Also, on my website is my certificate classes I offer in Enneagram Coaching. Some of them are on Zoom live. Those come up from time to time. And also, I am adding to an ever-growing catalog of on-demand classes related to the Enneagram and coaching, and I would love for you to check out those classes. Thanks again for your support on Patreon and all those things. I really appreciate all of you guys. And at the time of making this video, we're almost at 50,000 subscribers, which is just crazy. I never thought that anything like this would happen. And I want to just walk you through what's gone on in the last year or so in my life. And if you want to watch a video on how the Enneagram can be helpful for you, this isn't that video, okay? This is going to kind of go the other direction, like what maybe challenges might come in your life because of the Enneagram. And for anybody who's gone through some junk in your life or gone through some stuff, maybe something I'll say in this video will encourage you to keep going and not give up and not quit. So I want to walk you through a little bit more about what's gone on in my life and where I'm at now, and what the future of my channel is here. And so many of you guys, I've gotten to know so many of you through coaching appointments. And if you haven't yet, if you would go to my website, tomlahue.com, and right on the home page, there's a place for you to enter your email address so that I can send you messages. I don't overdo it. I try to just send 1 or 2 a week, but I would love for you to be on my mailing list so that you can stay informed of new things that are coming out with my channel. If you haven't done that yet, please do that. But so many of you guys I've gotten to meet. I have done well over 1,000 coaching appointments, maybe more. And I tell you, I've just been so blessed. God has just opened up so many doors for me to meet some fantastic people that I never would have met otherwise. And I want to just walk you through the long story. And I haven't shared any of this with any of you guys, and I want to share it with you guys now, just so that you can kind of know what's transpired in the last couple years. I'm going to start by saying this. I started the YouTube channel on the Enneagram a couple of years ago. I forget now how long it's been. Maybe like 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Well, I found out about the Enneagram because one of my daughters, Grace, who's in some of my videos, so a lot of my earlier videos, Grace, who's an 8-wing 7, she still does coaching appointments. So in the link down at the bottom of this YouTube channel, you can find her link, and she hasn't been able to do a lot of videos because she's busy as a mom, but she still does coaching appointments with people, and she's fantastic. But Grace, was the first to find out about the Enneagram, and she found out about the Enneagram at a church conference at Compassion Christian Church in Savannah. Now, I live in Daytona Beach, just outside of Daytona in Port Orange, and she went up to a conference, a ministry conference, and that's our background. Our background is ministry. My wife Traci and I have been in local church ministry since we were kids. We went to Christian college, and I went to become a minister, and we started in youth ministry, and we've been in ministry for 30 years now. Traci and I have been married for 31 years. And we started immediately, in youth ministry, and then I started working as a pastor. And I had known Myers-Briggs. I know I'm an ENFP. My wife's an ISFJ, and I'd known about DISC. I'm an Otter. I think Otter golden, I think is what I am. I don't remember. And that's just not the right terms, but what's the terms that we like? Anyway, Grace went to this conference at Compassion Christian in Savannah, great church, fantastic ministry. And she learned about the Enneagram. And she came home and she was like, Dad, you need to check out the Enneagram. And I thought, I don't know. Another personality profile. And so I got a little book called the whatever it is, the Beginner's Guide to the Enneagram. It's a little yellow book. It's on one of my bookshelves, but it's kind of cartoony, but it's very basic and very simple. And I thought, wow, this is really helpful. Like, okay, I knew immediately I was a 7. My wife knew immediately she was a 2. And then I went to YouTube. And I tried to look for information on the Enneagram, and I found Richard Rohr's videos. Actually, it was kind of like one long video that was chopped up, and it was sort of hard to put together, but we just watched everything until we figured out how to watch his video. And I thought, this is fantastic. And the Enneagram has a way of getting in and like clawing at you and digging at you and making you feel uncomfortable if you let it. And it certainly did me, because I remember thinking, gluttony, that's not my sin. My sin's not gluttony. But the more, and I'm a 7, of course, 7 wing 6. And the more I studied and learned about it, the more fascinated I became with it. Now, all this time, I've been a full-time pastor. I've worked in churches, full-time as the minister, the preacher, the pastor, whatever you want to call me. And I was working at a church here in Florida and in the Daytona area. And I was learning about the Enneagram, and I would come home and talk about it with my family, and everybody was interested in it. Everybody was fascinated with it. And, 7 has a line to 5. If you know what that means, it means when 7s get excited about something, we can really focus our attention. And I would say that 7s can be as or more productive than any other type if they're excited about it. When we're not excited about something, it's really hard to be focused on it. Really hard to be focused. Let me just say this: never fire a 7 because they're not focused. That's kind of the problem of being a 7, is it's really hard to focus our attention sometimes where it needs to be. And that's going to get into what I'm going to talk about later about why I lost my job. So let's go back here. I'm learning about the Enneagram, and for probably a couple hours every morning before I would get up and go to work, I would open a couple of books. I just ordered a lot of books, and I just started reading about the Enneagram. I was reading and learning. And I've got, a bookshelf or two filled with books and books on Kindle and audiobooks. And I'm just absorbing as fast as I can, as much information as possible to try to understand not only myself. And that's really what got me interested in the Enneagram was as a minister, you're always working with people, and people do crazy stuff. We could just pause it right there, and you could maybe make a YouTube short, a TikTok video out of that. People do crazy stuff. They do stuff that doesn't make sense. I see them doing things that don't make sense. And sometimes people close to you, it's not just people out there. It's sometimes people right around you are just doing stuff that doesn't make sense. And you're trying to understand people. You're trying to understand their perspective. And I went into learning about the Enneagram primarily because I wanted to figure out, help me understand why people do what they do. Help me understand. And it was really helping me understand the core motivations that we all have. And I was just overwhelmed and fascinated. I wanted to talk to everybody about this. And that's kind of a mistake. It's great to be excited about something. It's great to be passionate about something. But, now looking back, maybe I could have tempered that excitement a little bit because I really did want to talk to everybody about it. I was like, do you know about this? Do you know your type? Here's all the 9 types. Let's talk about it. Let's sit down. Let's talk. And not everybody is ready for those kinds of conversations. It's what my acupuncture doctor calls forbidden knowledge. If a person's not ready to learn, then that knowledge becomes forbidden to them. And as a 7, a little bit of a salesman, even though I don't mean to be. When you get excited about something, you become very persuasive. And I find myself talking about what I'm excited about. And I'm talking to people about their personality types. And my wife encouraged me, why don't you make a YouTube channel? Why don't you start you're learning all of this and it's great stuff. Why don't you just start sharing it and with people? Because when we were looking for information, we had to turn to books because there wasn't much. I guess I didn't really check podcasts. I know there's a lot of podcasts now on the Enneagram, but I didn't really check podcasts. Maybe there were some, but there wasn't a lot on YouTube. And so I did. I started a YouTube channel, and I just started documenting my learning of the Enneagram. I would go read, 20 pages, 30 pages, and then every Friday or so, I would make a video just documenting what I was learning. And it wasn't long before someone told me about, I think it's Sandals Church, where the preacher at that church, the pastor at that church, preached a sermon series, one sermon each week on every one of the 9 types. And basically, it was a series on like how we get lost and how we find our way back to God. And some of you guys have maybe watched that sermon series. But I think it's Sandals Church, maybe out in California or Oregon or somewhere. And so I watched that sermon series and I thought, wow, this is really good. This is really helpful. And he has a character for every one of the 9 types. And I kind of took that and developed it my own way. Sort of use that as a permission, like, hey, this guy did this. This makes a lot of sense. And this is so helpful. Maybe this would be a good way to communicate the Enneagram to a church in a way that they would understand it and could be really helped by it. So I did. I created a sermon series. I think it was like 10 sermons altogether. And I started with, type 1, and I think I used the Apostle Paul as a type 1, and then I did type 2 and 3, and I did a message on each of the types. And it wasn't long before I started to realize that this series is getting kind of mixed reviews. I feel like I'm a pretty gifted speaker, and it just kind of comes naturally to me. I love the Lord, I love the church, and I love to speak. And so speaking comes pretty natural. And I would put a lot of work into these messages, and I would get up and I would try to share this information as passionately and as powerfully as I could. And also, I was also doing like a Sunday night class on the Enneagram. So if you came during that message series, you could listen to a message each Sunday illustrating a Bible character for every type, and then you were invited to come back Sunday night as we kind of just unpacked what the Enneagram is and how it could be useful and helpful to us in understanding ourselves and seeing how we sometimes, get sort of screwed up in life, and then our dominant sins and finding our way back to ourselves and back to home, and, loving each other and dealing with the people you can't get away from and all this. And I thought, this is just fantastic. This is fantastic. And I was so excited about it. I was so hopeful. And what I found was about the 3rd or 4th message in is I was getting kind of, some grumblings. And not everybody was appreciating this message series. It was biblical, so they couldn't complain that it wasn't biblical. But I think there was quite a few people that just didn't understand what I was talking about. It didn't connect with them. It didn't make sense. And I would say it like this. Looking back, I would say about 20% of the people in the church, and it's a pretty small church, about 250 people at the time, and about 20% of the people thought, this is the best thing I've ever heard. Next to Jesus, this is like the most helpful thing I've ever learned. This is changing my life. Carl, are you awake? Are you hearing this? And about 20% of the people, really the lights came on. And I had people say to me things like, Tom, all you should ever teach is the Bible and the Enneagram. Nothing else even matters. And I was like, well, that might be a little bit of an overstatement, but I get what they're saying. And then there was probably 20% on the other side, maybe 10% on the other side, that just thought, why are you talking about this? This doesn't have anything to do with God. This doesn't have anything to do with Jesus. This is not the gospel. This is not. And, it's kind of the same people I realize that have a problem when you put a Christmas tree in the sanctuary. It's like, this doesn't belong. This is pagan. This isn't what it ought to be. And And there was a few people that just didn't appreciate the message series. They didn't understand it. They didn't understand why I was going through it. They felt like, maybe this was not biblical, even though every message was about a biblical character and just kind of illustrating their life and how they showed the traits of this type. And then I would say that the vast majority, like in most things, just probably didn't care. They were just like, I'm going to church. I'm going to church, and I can check that off my box. I went to church. And I would say probably the vast majority just sat there and endured like they do every Sunday. Anyway, no disrespect to believers, but, you guys that grew up in church, you know what it's like. Okay, so let's see. What happened next? Well, after I finished that series, and I made myself finish it because I thought, this is good. I know it's good. I believe in it. I believe it's good, even if I'm not getting the responses always that I would like. And I would say that by the time that series was done, there were a few people that left. There were, and I felt bad about that, They would make complaints like, the church down the street is doing all this ministry, and they're feeding the homeless, they're taking care of that, and we're talking about the Enneagram. The idiot-gram. I had some people tell me that. People can be nasty. I don't know if you've noticed, but people can be nasty. Even good people, even great people, even loving people, even godly people can sometimes just be difficult, right? And so, let's see. By the end of that sermon, but I pressed on, and I would look to my wife, because I have a very strong 6 wing. Okay, I have a very strong line to 1. In fact, now that I'm kind of buying into the subtypes, not the subtypes, I believe in the subtypes 100%. But now that I'm kind of buying into tri-types, I realized I'm a 7-4-1 or a 7-1-4, the visionary. And, that one wing really strong, or that one line, sorry, not a wing. What am I? An Enneagram teacher? That one line, is really strong with me of do the right thing, be responsible. If you can't have fun, then show up and do the right thing. Be responsible. Take out the trash. Be a good boy. That's really strong in me. And I have a really strong 6 wing. So I'm dominant 1 and 6. That means I need to work on 8 and 5 a little more. But anyway, so that 6 wing of being anxious and nervous because people are not necessarily understanding or all appreciating what I'm doing. I looked at my wife, is this okay? I looked at my staff, is this okay? And I pressed on. I finished it. I was proud of myself because I believed in it. I knew it was good. I knew it was helpful. And even if people didn't like it or didn't understand it, and even some people left, I felt like, this is good. This is so good. But I'll tell you what happened, though, after that was I pretty much just quit trying to teach the Enneagram in the local church. I think I did one more class on like a Wednesday night or something with a small group. And I would use it all the time. When I was counseling people, when I was meeting with people, and then in just conversations with the right people, I would talk Enneagram, as long as they wanted to and were willing to. But I just quit trying to share this with the church at large because I just realized, it left a bad taste in people's mouth because either they were upset because, and they left, or they were upset because somebody they loved left over this message series. And when I say left, I mean, we went from like 250 to like 230. It was not a huge exodus of people. It was just a couple of disgruntled people that didn't like it, didn't understand it. But I just, from that moment on, I realized, look, I don't want to cause trouble. I don't want to make this a problem. I don't want to make it a test of faith that this is the Enneagram church and you have to, come in, shave your head, and put on a dashiki, which I love this. I know it has the Om symbol. Somebody texted, oh, Dr. Tom, you have an Om symbol on your shirt. Whatever. Relax, people. Relax, okay? It's just a shirt. But I remember I'm an NFP, so individuality and authenticity. I like, different things, okay? So, whatever. And I kind of quit pushing the Enneagram on my church. I just decided, okay, the people that get it, they love it, they think it's great, they talk Enneagram, but I don't want to bother people with this if they're not into it. And so I kind of did an overcorrection. And I'm like, I'm just going to preach the Bible. I'm just going to preach through the Bible. Just one book at a time. Just preach the Bible, because I just don't want the conflict. I don't want the problems. And at the end of the day, I work. It's a job, so you can't argue with preaching the Bible if you're in a church. If they get mad at you, you're like, I'm sorry, it's the book of Romans. You don't like it? I don't know what to tell you. You have a problem with Paul, not with me. Okay, you have a problem with God. So I probably overcorrected a little bit. But anyway, and everything was fine. Everything was fine for the next, whatever, year or two, because it's been a long time since I tried to do the Enneagram series. And I just kind of dropped it. I just didn't talk about it anymore. Now, you remember COVID happened, right? COVID happened and all the churches got shut down, and we were shut down for a little while. And during that time when we were shut down, my wife said, why don't you open up a couple of appointments during the week where people that are because people were emailing me because of my YouTube channel. They were emailing, hey, Dr. Tom, what about this? Hey, Tom, what about that? What about this type? What about that? How do I know my type? And she said, why don't you just offer a couple of hours a week, open up some coaching appointments for people and see if anybody books any appointments. So I did. During COVID, I opened up some time slots that were available to offer coaching, and I was overwhelmed. With the amount of interest. People wanted to talk about this. Like me, people were fascinated with it. They were learning, they were watching my videos, and they wanted to connect, and they wanted to ask questions. They wanted somebody to talk to about it. And so I started doing coaching appointments and started offering Enneagram coaching appointments. I bet if you go back and watch my earliest videos, I don't say anything about Enneagram coaching because I didn't offer it. Well, now I started offering Enneagram coaching. Well, when COVID kind of started to close to sort of taper off, because we went back to services after several weeks, and I kept my appointment schedule limited because I have a full-time job at a church. And I was just living my happiest life. I was living my best life because I'm learning about the Enneagram. I'm making videos on Fridays. I'm not really sharing any of that with the church itself. I'm studying the Bible and preaching on weekends, and I'm just kind of living my best life, living in these two worlds. Now, this is nothing new to me because for years before this, I was teaching part-time in colleges. I have way too much education. When a 7 gets excited about something, and more is always better. So yes, I did go get 3 real master's degrees and a doctorate in ministry. And I have, for the last 20 years, been teaching part-time in Christian colleges, teaching Bible, ministry, all kinds of things, whatever was needed. And so I've always kind of lived in two worlds like this. But when Grace graduated from Johnson University in Florida, I quit teaching down there because it was a long drive. And so doing the YouTube channel and meeting with people and coaching people became sort of that outlet for me to a broader audience. I always wanted to speak not only to my local church, but also to a little bit broader audience. When I was in college, I was training the trainers or teaching the teachers. And now I have this megaphone to the world. And I was doing appointments, it was overwhelming. I'm doing appointments with people from South Africa, from Australia, New Zealand, Germany, the Netherlands, England, all over the United States, Canada, Mexico, Central America, and it's just fascinating meeting people from all over the globe, and people would ask me questions about my faith, and a lot of people would let me share my faith, and I never did it in a way that was pushy, or I never tried to do it in a way that was pushy, but if people gave me the opportunity and they wanted to talk about it, we would talk about Jesus if they wanted to, but I wouldn't push it on people. Just trying to respect, their belief system, and the appointment was about the Enneagram. And the Enneagram is helpful no matter what you believe, no matter what your faith background is, or if you have an organized faith background. Anyway, so I'm living my best life. And lo and behold, well, let's just say that because I have a side business that is very successful, and I'm limiting myself and my time and my energy to this side business of the Enneagram YouTube channel and coaching and creating courses. By the way, once I started coaching people, I had other people reaching out to me who are life coaches and counselors and teachers and pastors, and they're like, Tom, could you teach me how you do Enneagram coaching? So I'm like, okay, let me just try to think of the simplest way I can package this. And I created a Zoom class on Enneagram coaching. And I've done that class now like 13 times. And I usually have a good group of 10 to 20 people in that class every time I've offered it. Well, then I started doing other classes, Enneagram relationship coaching, Enneagram and Christian life coaching, how it blends together with Christian worldview, Christian theology, and then Enneagram and spirituality, like the larger spiritual world. I studied all of that, and the Enneagram has a very kind of metaphysical overtones to it. So I wanted to explore all that misty metaphysical stuff and find some value and use there for the average person. And so I started creating these courses teaching people how to do what I'm doing in Enneagram coaching. And I'm living my best life. Happy in the church, happy doing this side business. And I just feel like I'm having this great impact in both realms, a great impact on my local church where I'm serving as a pastor, and a great impact globally. And people are giving me all this positive feedback, and I'm just loving life, thanking God every day. Now, long story short is eventually some of the powers that be in the church I was serving didn't like the fact that I had started a business, didn't like the fact that my focus of my attention wasn't exclusively on the local church. And I already said, sevens, it's hard to ever have exclusive focus on anything. And I felt like, I was very focused on both very well. But whatever. The powers that be basically told me I needed to stop the business or shut the business down. Well, it's just not going to happen. I feel like God has called me to serve in the local church. No doubt about that. He's gifted me. I've been over prepared for this task, and so many wonderful people along the way have invested in me to serve in the local church. But I have seen the impact the Enneagram has made in people's lives. I know the impact it's made in my life. It doesn't take the place of Jesus. Okay, it just shows you how lost we are. It shows you how broken we are. It shows you how much we need help, how much we need each other to understand each other. It shows you how screwed up we are. And I've gotten a lot of negative feedback over the years about my channel. Like, Tom, you're so negative. Your videos are just, I'm like, I'm sorry. Everybody has superpowers. Every type has superpowers, but we all have our dark side as well. And I feel like if you could expose that, if you could expose the dark side in each of us, then maybe we don't have to be so afraid of it. We don't have to be so driven by it. If we wake up to it, we don't have to be so on autopilot, and maybe we can turn and face the dragon. Well, I don't know if we'll ever slay the dragon, but if we could turn and face that gluttony, or face that lust, or face that envy that's chasing us down, and if we can expose it, then maybe we can not let it run and rule our lives so much. Well, when I was essentially pushed into a corner and had to choose, and I was essentially asked to give up this Enneagram business, I couldn't do it. I just believed that God was calling me, and I could see lives being changed. I could see people being helped, and I had so many opportunities to minister to people all over the globe. There's just no way I could say okay to that. And so I was asked to resign, and I did. And, it was crazy too, because we had the Sunday before last year was Easter Sunday. and we had like record attendance. We had 427 people on Easter that Sunday. And then the very next Sunday after it, I had all these terrible meetings with people trying to, plead my case, and everything was going great. Everything, in my opinion, everything was going great. But then I had to resign. And I had to get up and tell people, look, I had to resign because I started a YouTube channel about the Enneagram, and I just had to quit. And I felt awful. I felt terrible. It was like one of the worst feelings I ever had to let go of that pulpit, to let go of that congregation. I wanted to do both, and I felt like I was effective at both, but I was told that I couldn't do both, and I had to choose. And for the first time in 30 years, I was not a pastor anymore. And I, could have had an identity crisis. I could have questioned, well, who am I? I guess I'm just a regular guy. Am I just a regular guy? What do I do now? Do I go get a job at the grocery store? Which is fine. I loved my job as a teenager in the grocery store. Down here in Florida, it's Publix. That's the only grocery store to work at. But I what am I going to do? I mean, I'm going to do this Enneagram thing full time. And so that opened a door for me to do this full time. And I just opened my calendar for more appointments, and I started creating more classes, and I opened up the opportunity to come now. Now I can travel. So I started telling people, look, if you want me to come, if you want to invite me to come speak to your church leadership team and train them in the Enneagram, or your business, and I am going to California, and I went back to California, and I'm wherever, I'll be happy to come. What's so ironic about all of this is, I lose the job at the church where I'm serving, and now I'm going all over the nation training other churches that are 4 or 5 times the size of the church that I was working at. I'm now training church staffs in the Enneagram. And I just thought, this is so weird. This is so ironic, and training lawyers and insurance teams. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go through this door. God is shutting a door, and he's opening another door. And I'm going to just move forward and just do this full time. And I'm still, in a lot of ways, like a pastor. I'm still serving like a pastor, caring about people, loving people, helping them to get along, helping them to understand each other and overcome some of their blind spots. And I just remember that being like a really dark time, though. And if you go back and look at my YouTube channel, I'm making videos called I'm Done. And by the way, in the middle of all that, my dad died. At the height of COVID. My mom died 6 months later. My wife's dad died 3 months later. My son Harrison started having seizures, and it's just been a year of just chaos in hospitals and exhausting. And this has been just really a tough year. Really a tough year. And it would have been easy to kind of give up hope and just get frustrated. And I'm telling you guys, I'm not frustrated with the church. The church has always had problems. It's made up of people. And I don't want you to hear this video and say, oh, wow, see, churches are bad. Look what they do. I don't want you to hear it like that. Churches have always been a mess. And any real pastor knows that. And any real pastor will admit that. I get so sick of pastors and churches promoting themselves all the time. Oh, we're a great church. We love everybody. We're the hope of the world. It's like every church is broken because it's made up of broken people. If it wasn't for the grace of God, we'd all be a shipwreck. And every church is like a barn filled with barn animals. And, we just do the best we can and love people. And we're not always going to get along. We're not always going to see the same way. And the challenge is to love people when they're not lovable. That's the challenge. Anybody can love people when they're lovable, when they treat you right, when they respect you. When they don't, that's when you really have to have some help from God. You have to have some help to love people. And I don't want you to hear this as like I'm putting down the church, because I'm not at all. The enemy is alive and well and even working in churches. That's probably where he wants to work the most, right? And so, long story short is some of the people in that church came to me afterwards and they were like, look, you're not done being our pastor. We want you to start a new church. And I didn't have any interest in that. I was burned out. I was exhausted. I had been like kind of fighting a uphill battle for the last 6 months or a year with some of the leadership. And I was like, I don't think I want to do that. And they were relentless. And they just kept talking to me, Tom, you got to do this. And I was on a walk one day and I realized, if they have enough faith to be a church, why don't I have enough faith to be their pastor? And so I said, okay, if you guys want to start a church and you want to draw up all the paperwork and you want to do this, and essentially I told them, if you're dumb enough to do this, I'll be dumb enough to lead it. And they did. I thought they would quit, but they didn't quit. And we started meeting in a computer store, about 60 people. And, we just had somebody in a church that owned a computer store, and we bought chairs and we just started having our little worship service in a computer store. And then we moved to the movie theater in town. And this year at Easter, we haven't even been in existence a year yet. We've been in existence like 8 months. And this year at Easter, we had 183 people at church at our movie theater in town. We usually average about 120 people. That's a real church. I mean, we already have a real church. The name of the church is Mercy Church, because it's important that we live in God's mercy and that we show God's mercy no matter what. Okay? And so now I'm working as an Enneagram coach, business leader, whatever I am, full-time, and I work in the local church as a pastor part-time. So you can go to mercychurchfl.org and I upload my sermons every week, and you can listen to me preach if you want to hear what I sound like when I preach. But right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing this full time. And what's my point in making this video is not everybody is going to think the Enneagram is great. There you go. Let's just make that the point. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I love to talk about it. And when I can't not analyze people when they're communicating to me, like what is their type, and so that I can relate to them better. I can't turn it off. And I am excited about it. I'm also still excited about the local church, and I believe it is the hope of the world. And I'm excited to work in the local church. But not everybody is going to appreciate your excitement or enthusiasm or your love or your discussions or conversation about the Enneagram always. There may be a price to pay, this forbidden knowledge that you have. And realize you need some people who will talk to you about this, that you can have a conversation with about it. But realize you might not want to talk about it with everybody. Not everybody is open to it. Not everybody wants to be self-aware. It can be a very comforting thing to stay asleep. And waking up can be a painful thing. And sometimes people resist it. And not only will they not like it, but they'll be angry with you about it. So just a word of warning as you go forward in life. You love the Enneagram? Great. You think it's fantastic? You think it's helpful? Great. You can't help but see the world now through this paradigm? Fantastic. I'm with you 100%. Just recognize that there's going to be people in your life that are going to say, what is this idiot-gram? This idiot-gram. What is this? What is this symbol? Is this satanic? Look at that symbol. I've got a good friend, that just created a course, like a history of the Enneagram course, and helping us to see the Christian background of the Enneagram, which I think it does. I think it absolutely does. Take my class on the Enneagram and Christian life coaching. I'll break down all of my theology of how I think the Enneagram fits with a Christian worldview, because it does. I think it tells us the same thing that we learned in the Garden of Eden, just in different words, different ways. Anyway, I would say this. I don't in any way give up on the local church. I still love the church. I still work in the church, still committed to the church. And I realize that if you're not, I just want to tell you, look, I know what it's like to be church hurt. I understand. I get it now. I'm one of you people that has been, hurt by the church. But I just recognize that you just get up. We just get up and we keep going. And that's me anyway. And if you're not there yet, I have all kinds of grace for you. I'm not trying to preach at you. That's on Sundays. I'm not trying to preach at you. I'm just saying I get it. There was a dark place there when all my family died, and I lost my job and I lost my identity for 30 years, and unknown. I don't know what this Enneagram thing's I don't know what doors are gonna open or if any doors are gonna open. But I just kept making videos, and I'm gonna keep making videos. And right now, you're probably seeing a lot of stuff on me about fear and faith and dedication, and it's because I'm creating a new class on demand called Resilient Mindset Coaching. Now, why am I doing that? Is anybody going to take it? I don't know. I really don't. I'm going to work the Enneagram into it, but talk about every type, how every type is resilient or not. I'm going to work that in there. But I'm doing it because I need to do it myself. That's why I'm doing it. I am going through some information on resilience, which is coming back after a shakeup, after a letdown, about not giving up, about keeping going even though things might be difficult. Why am I creating a course on that? Because I need to go through it. And so sometimes, I'm going to bring you information that you need, and a lot of times I'm bringing you information I need. So I need to go through it myself, and I need to stay focused on what it is I'm doing here as a Enneagram YouTuber, whatever that is. And I am going to continue to work on bringing you the best content possible and stuff that matters to me. It's really hard for me to be excited about things when they don't matter to me. And so I am bringing you what is making a difference in my own life, and I believe and trust that it'll make a difference in your life. So I hope that this video encourages you, because right now, as we stand right now, I'm encouraged. I literally am living my best life now. Again, I'm living my best life. I work in a church that I love, a church that loves me, loves my family. They are so wonderful, and I love the people in that church. I'm so thrilled to be useful and working in a local congregation. And we don't have a lot of rules. We don't have a lot of expectations. We meet in a movie theater. We start every service off with a fun song. 2 weeks ago, we started with Separate Ways from Journey. Last week, Jimmy Buffett. And we just start with relax. You come into the movie theater and there's just, the ocean and reggae music playing. And then we welcome you with a song that is familiar to you, and we end up at Jesus. We always end up at Jesus. But we start with people where they are, and we just let go of so much junk that chokes a church out. And it's growing, and it's doing great. And I'm living my best life. And I'm so grateful for every one of you guys that's with me in this journey. And I hope to continue to be a part of your life. Thank you for letting me into your life. And I hope to continue to influence and be a voice of reason and debacle for you going forward in life. And as always, be present to life, even the bad parts. Or as my friends across the ocean would say in England, even the I don't know if they call them bad or yucky, but the bad bits, even the bad bits of life. It's hard for me as a 7 to be present in that stuff. Like, I just wanted to shut down. I didn't want to feel stuff. I remember out on a walk after all this happened and thinking to myself, I think what I'm feeling right now is what other people call anger. I think that's what I'm feeling. And it's not pleasant. I don't like it. But I had to acknowledge all those feelings. I had to deal with them. I had to sit in my rocking chair and, let myself work through all that stuff. Disappointment, frustration, hurt, betrayal, all that junk. And forgive and let it go and realize God has a big plan. He has a big plan, and the enemy has a plan too. But his plan's always better. It always works out in his way. So I'm just moving forward, guys. And I just wanted to take you behind the scenes and share with you stuff that maybe most people probably wouldn't share, but I just felt like, it's that authenticity stuff. I just felt like, it's probably good if you guys know what's really going on behind the scenes. And if I looked discouraged a few months ago, it's because I was, but not anymore. And let's move forward together. I'm going to become more resilient, and I hope that you will, because you're big enough to face whatever challenges. I know you don't feel like you are sometimes. You can feel really small, but believe me, with God's help, you're big enough to face whatever challenges are coming at you, because they're coming. If they're not here already, they're coming. And I want you to be ready and prepared for whatever they are. We're going to do this together, all right? Be present to life. I'll see you guys next time.